Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about how you can begin to elicit and anchor states over the phone. So obviously, if you're going to be eliciting and anchoring states auditorily because you're talking to somebody, it's going to be important that you have an auditory anchor. And that to me can come in a couple of different ways. One, and most obviously, is your tone of voice. So Richard Bandler is prodigious neurolinguistic genius creator of NLP. If you go to one of his trainings, you'll notice that he does a lot of tonal anchoring. And I don't know if this is still true, but in the day, it is said that he would have anywhere from 18 to 20 different tonal anchors set, depending on the state, the story that he was working with. Well, you and I are not training large audiences over the course of 7 days and doing change work, but we might be on a phone call where we want to influence someone to buy, perhaps. And wouldn't it be nice if, instead of having to consciously tell your client, think about how much money you'll make when you buy my product or service, right? What if you could just get them into the state that they want to feel from having your product or service, and then associate that state to a particular tone of voice? So this is going to require that you have a certain amount of tonal control. It's going to mean that you need to be able to have different tones of voice for different things. It's going to mean that you need to be able to elicit states from people. But let's say, for example, that your client starts talking about starts going into a particular state, and as they do, you start to hear their tone shifting. When that happens, you're going to want to feed back their responses to them in a certain tone of voice, so that later on you can then elicit that state with the same tone of voice. Another way that you can begin to anchor is by making a specific sound. So if you have a pen nearby, this is something that's very subtle, nobody would notice, but as you're talking to them and they go into state, and then stop. And then when they go into state again, boom. You do that a couple times, then before you talk about your product or service, see the great thing about this, and then they go into state, and then you talk about your product or service, and they're associating that state with your product or service. Make sure that you click the link below to apply for our practice group, where we don't just talk about how to do this, but we practice it with each other so that you can learn to actually become more persuasive instead of watching videos online and then having all of this information, actually start to apply it. Now, with me, click the link.